good afternoon, Senator Jackson. Thank you for being a part of Discuss DeKalb for the DeKalb Chamber. We appreciate you today. So I'll
Thanks for
begin
having
by, yeah, thanks. So I'll begin by asking you if you could take a moment to introduce yourself and the area that you represent.
Sure. My name is Senator Kim Jackson, and I represent District 41, which includes DeKalb and parts of actually Gwinnett County, but mostly Stone Mountain, Tucker, Pine Lake, kind of south and central DeKalb is my main area of focus.
Okay, wonderful. And how long have you been a senator or represented this particular district?
So this is my first term. I was elected in 2020 and began my service in 2021.
Wonderful. We appreciate your service. And have you been assigned to any particular committees? And if so, what are they and what's your role?
Yes, so I serve on 4 different committees, the first of which is Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. The Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs addresses issues of agriculture that are statewide. And then Consumer Affairs, it can be anything from whether or not you are going to receive a piece of mail in the mail that looks like an official government form, but really isn't, and how we regulate that, to how we think about payday lending. So Consumer Affairs part of that committee is quite broad. I'm also on Natural Resources, which thinks about Georgia's natural resources. So our state parks, how we care for our forests and our hunting and fishing, things like that. All of those are regulated, and we talk about those things. Our biggest and most latest discussion has been around issues of coal ash, and how we take care of our state's many, many dams. So most of us don't think about this at all, but we have lakes, and many of those lakes are created by dams that are owned by the state, and so we regulate how those dams stay well so that they can protect people. Also on public safety. Public safety is a committee that addresses all issues related to public safety. Most of all, we think a lot about how we care for law enforcement officers, firefighters, and EMTs. So sometimes we do bills that help to encourage different types of training for medics or for communication staff at 911 centers. But we also look at public safety issues that are directly related to how people engage with law enforcement or how law enforcement engages with us. It's a pretty broad spectrum. And then the final committee that I'm on is government oversight. Government oversight is the committee that really explores issues pertaining to our government grounds, our Capitol grounds. So who are we going to have a statue of on our grounds, or who will we not have a statue of? And where will those statues be placed, right? Those kinds of things go through government affairs and our government oversight. And there are a few other things like that we kind of oversee in government oversight. So that's the broad view of the 4 committees on which I serve.
Wow, that's impressive. It's so much that people I didn't know about some of those, and I'm sure that people don't think that these things are actually governed, right, by someone that lives in our community. So that's really awesome. So are you currently working on any specific bill that interests you that you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So I have 3 bills that I'm actively kind of working through the process. One is in agriculture. So this is one of the things that when you're on a committee, you get introduced to lots of different ideas, right? And so because I'm on agriculture, I was exposed to some problems that I believe we have in our Hemp Act. So hemp is, it's a fiber, right? But hemp is also the plant that is related to cannabis. It actually is cannabis. It's related to marijuana, but it's not marijuana. So it's a highly regulated farming practice because hemp is also cannabis. But right now, our laws have been that such that if you have a misdemeanor for carrying drugs, so any type of drug misdemeanor, then you're not allowed to get a license to grow hemp. And if you have any felony, it doesn't matter. It could be a felony that's related to robbing a bank. If you have any felony right now today, you're not allowed to get a license to grow hemp, which I believe is kind of the next really major industry that we're going to see in agriculture. So I introduced a bill this year that we're going to see in committee quite soon that will get rid of the misdemeanor completely. So if you have a misdemeanor, no problem. Misdemeanors are misdemeanors. You can get a license to farm hemp. And felonies, if you have a felony related to drugs, then we're going to take a pause period, and we call this a second chance bill. So after 10 years after your conviction for any drug related felony, this would allow you to be able to apply for a license for hemp. So I'm actually really excited about it. It has bipartisan support, and this is actually something you'll hear for all my bills that I talk about today.
Okay.
They all will be bipartisan. That's how you get legislation passed in
Yes.
Georgia. So that's my farming bill. I have a bill for public safety as well, again, based on the committee that I'm on. This bill is quite simple, and that it will allow for the death benefit that families receive when any public safety officer, so that's law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, whenever a law enforcement officer dies in the line of duty, their family is entitled to a death benefit that we, the state of Georgia, provide. We, the taxpayers, actually provide, right?
Yeah.
So this law would expand that and acknowledge that many of our law enforcement officers and public safety in general officers end up experiencing great levels of stress. And sadly, sometimes that leads to deaths by suicide. So this bill would extend the death benefit to cover the families of public safety officers who die by suicide. What we know is that last year we had 5 public safety officers who died by suicide. And, we can talk about, there are lots of different things that go into how that happens. But at the end of the day, our public safety officers, they work for us and they run towards the fire, right? While we're
Not
running
away.
away,
Yes.
right? They run towards the fire. They run towards the gunfight. They run towards these things. And
Right.
so I think that the least that we can do is to give the death benefit to their families in the event that they die by suicide. So that's my second bill. And then my third bill, and this is the last one, is a sexual assault protective order. So right now in Georgia, if you are a victim of domestic violence, you can go down to the state courts and apply for a temporary protective order. And the judge will probably grant that to you. And you'll have what we kind of colloquially call a restraining order. So you can get that if you're involved in a relationship with that person, right? So if you're dating them or you're married to them, then you can get that. But this sexual assault order will fill in the gap. This is for people who become victims of sexual assault who weren't dating or married or living with the person who sexually assaulted them. More likely, they may be on the same college campus with that person, right? So this would create a pathway for a person like that to be able to get a temporary protective order, which again, we call a restraining order. That would create a pathway for them to be able to do that through the civil courts. And it would have no bearing on the criminal courts. As many people know, many victims of sexual assault choose not to go to the police for 1,000 reasons, right? And so this will say, okay, hopefully people will report, but if they don't report to the police, they still have a pathway where they can at least get a restraining order and have some safety between them and the person that they've accused of victimizing them.
Makes great sense to me. I didn't know that if someone assaulted you and you weren't related to them, that there's a problem with proceeding, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can go to the police and go through the criminal process, but that can be really challenging, right? So this just creates another alternative.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. So what issue or issues do you see are the most pressing during this session?
So I will always believe that our most important job is to fully fund our education system. Georgia can only be as great as our kids are. That's really my understanding, because our kids they're going to be the ones that replace us, right? They're going to be the ones that I go to see at the doctor when I'm, older, and I want to know that they've learned how to read, write, and do arithmetic and have gotten a really strong, solid foundation.
Sure.
So for me, that's the highest priority, is that we make sure we have a budget that fully funds our educational systems and that really prioritizes our children and getting the resources that they need. And it's more than just the reading, math, and arithmetic, right? It's more than just the sciences. It's also around the support services. So making sure that we have counselors available for these students, particularly given the 2 years of pandemic and the learning loss, right? We want to make sure that they have the kind of wraparound services that they need in order to thrive. And so that's my high priority. After that, I'm always thinking about access to the ballot box. So
Okay.
we live in a democracy, and our democracy works because we vote, right? Like
Yes.
that's kind of the heart of it.
Agreed. Yes.
It will only work if we vote.
Yeah.
And so, I'm paying special attention to trying to make sure that we roll back some of the bad legislation that we've seen that has made it more difficult for folks to vote, and that we continue to push positive legislation that helps increase access to the ballot box. So I think our democracy depends on it. In fact, I know our democracy depends on
Yes.
it. And so that is a high priority for me as well.
Okay, wonderful. Do you see one of these issues being more pressing or more challenging, I guess, than the other?
Sure. I mean, given the political climate that we're in, any increased access to the ballot box is certainly an uphill battle. I think as it relates to education and fully funding, Georgia has more money today than we've had in a long, long time.
Yes.
Uh, so we're kind of flush right now. So I think that the educational formula will most likely be fully funded because we do have the ability to do that. Teachers will receive a raise that they so desperately need.
Yes. Yes.
So, that's kind of the easier side of education. Now, we do have some bills that I think are actually bad for education around eliminating the ability to teach about, it's really to teach about issues that pertain to people of color, right? It's really wanting to limit how we talk about America's deep, dark past and present of racism and of enslavement. So that bill is very concerning. And I suspect we probably will see some form of that get pushed through, despite our concerns about that. And there's another bill that it's essentially a censorship bill that would limit or seeks to limit what books can be in public schools. They've kind of tempered it down a little bit,
Mhm.
but I suspect that will still show up and again, wants interfere with kind of how our schools and our librarians and teachers are able to educate our children. So those are the not positive things around education, but I do think in terms of fully funding, I anticipate that we'll be able to do that this year.
Great. Wonderful. So, how are you advancing economic development in your district?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that. I have been really, really interested in this issue and have been meeting actually with DeKalb County officials to talk about what that looks like
Mhm.
specifically. So my district has been. It's an interesting place. So a portion of my district is at the very end of the transit line. So, think Indian Creek Station, Kensington Station, and we are the last ones to see the kind of economic development that you've seen around all the other stations. Uh,
Yes,
I mean,
agreed.
right? Like, come on now, let's get it out here. Um, so I've been having conversations about that, and we're seeing some movement. So Indian Creek will see a new development rise up that will be it'll be a film industry. So it'll be a part of,
Yeah.
there'll be some studios and things like that that will come to Indian Creek. There was some work, and there is work being done around the Kensington station. What that's going to look like, we're not quite sure. People have been really clear in my district that they want nice things. So if you look at the transit station down the street at Avondale Estates, they have nice apartments, they have
Mhm.
really nice restaurants, they have some walkability involved,
Yes.
right? All that's there.
All
Um,
that.
and, and so I've been advocating with our DeKalb officials to say we want nice things too. And I say that also tempered with this real truth that we also need affordable housing, right?
Right.
This is a major issue in our county and in our state, quite frankly, is that
Mhm.
we need to have affordable housing. So how do we do both? How do we make sure that people who live in my district, who live in South DeKalb and Central DeKalb, have access to nice things and nice places to eat, all the wonderful things that we see our, let's be honest, our white colleagues to the west of us
Right.
receiving. how do we have that while also making room for affordable housing? And there's some tension there that's at play, but I'm very much involved in those conversations, and I'm trying to make sure that our commissioners and our state officials and the state funding that we have for these types of provisions, that they're all kind of working in concert to bring development to District 41.
I love it. Well, I was just appointed to the Stonecrest Transportation Committee. So
Yes,
hopefully we can work
congratulations.
together on some things. Yes, thank you. Because I'm a big proponent about transportation and walkability, right? We
Yeah,
don't have that. And I've been in DeKalb most of my life, and everything more or less looks the same. So, yeah.
yeah. In certain parts of the
In
cab,
certain
right?
parts, yes, yes.
Right.
Like you talk about the train stations, yes, of course. Yeah, so I'm excited about that and what that looks like. So next, how are you supporting the business community in your district?
Yeah, well, I hope that part of the ways that the business community feels supported, and I certainly welcome engagement with them, is that we've had a real strong open door. And so when there have been bills that have come through my office that have had impact on DeKalb businesses, folks have been able to come and talk to me about those bills. And so I hope that others will hear this and know that we do have an open door. We want to be able to be pro-business and supportive. And I also believe that when we support things like education, when we support things like further development, that fundamentally that actually helps our businesses too. So I think these things kind of are interconnected and go
Right.
hand in hand. But I'm really interested in continuing to have conversations to learn more. This is my first term, so I want to learn more from local businesses about how I can better help to ensure that DeKalb County's businesses continue to be thriving.
Wonderful. Now remind me, is part of your district in downtown Stone Mountain?
I have all of downtown Stone
Yes.
Mountain.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Wonderful. So you have a new mayor?
I do.
Yes.
Beverly Jones, the first African American woman mayor of Stone Mountain. I think the men on that mountain probably rolled over. Um,
Yeah, I read about that. And I remember our last conversation, you did talk about some of the businesses there. So I think that's one of the ways that you promote, or you support the business community in your district by talking
yeah,
about the businesses there and visiting and frequenting
that's
them.
right. And I can tell you, I can name all the eateries in downtown Stone Mountain because I am a frequent visitor of all the eateries. But
Yeah.
also, I mean, so many shops. I mean, Stone Mountain, downtown Stone Mountain has developed immensely in incredible ways. And so I'm really proud of what we've done in the village of Stone Mountain and encourage people. That's the one place actually, Kendra, if you think about like a lot around DeKalb hasn't changed, you come down to downtown Stone Mountain, you'll be surprised. It does not look like it did even 5 years ago.
You're
There's a
right.
lot of development.
We used
Yeah.
to shop there years ago when the
Yeah.
handbag company was there.
Uh-huh.
There was a toy company, I believe, upstairs. So yes, I
Well,
drive
come
through
on
there
back.
from time to time. I will do that. Well, maybe
Yeah.
meet for coffee. How about that?
Yes, there's a great coffee shop, Gillies. It's a Black-owned coffee shop. But also, if you want like earrings, you want to get your hair done, tattoos. I don't know if I'm promoting that or not, but all those things are available to you in downtown. But also just some really, really good food. We also have a wine berry. So if you like
Oh,
books and wine, it's Black-owned by a Black woman, in fact. Great vibe right downtown. I mean, I could talk all day about Stone
good to
Mountain
know.
downtown. So
But that's business development, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
we can get coffee, and then in the evening we can go and have a glass of wine and talk about a good book.
we'll do that. All
Yeah,
right,
I
sign me
like
up.
it.
All right, thank you. So we will wrap up. Is there anything else that you like for the chamber members to know? Any focus areas that are most critical to the success of the chamber?
Yeah, I mean, I want to just continue to reiterate the importance of communicating with all of your legislators about the issues that matter to you. I most recently kind of stumbled across a bill that I had no because of my own, I'm a pastor, I'm a priest. I
Yes,
don't know
yes.
all the things, right? And so I read a bill that seemed pretty innocuous to me. And I had, some real estate people who came to me and said, let me explain this to you and why it may not be that great. But I've also had folks come to me and say, this is a bill that we need. And so I encourage you, please, if it's not me, reach out to your other legislators and really talk about how these bills are impacting you or what you would like to see. That's how change gets made is when you tell us we need change to be made.
I agree wholeheartedly. I do tell people all the time that our elected officials are right here. They live among us, and they're accessible. They want you to communicate with them.
We do.
So, yeah, so I do appreciate you saying that and always being accessible and available to us in the chamber. So it's always great to talk to you and catch up.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's always great. I'm so glad that you all do this. It's so important, I think, for everybody to have an opportunity to meet their legislators, to get to know who we are. We're more than names on a ballot, right?
Yes,
And
right,
so
right.
I'm really grateful for these more intensive sit down conversations that help your members know better about who we are.
Okay, and if there's ever anything you think we need to know, please feel free to reach out and I'll make sure to stay in touch with you. I do appreciate you as always, just being so involved and accessible and just wonderful to work with.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Kendra. All
Thank you. Take care.
right, take care. Bye bye.